All right, welcome to Your Empowered Birth, how to get the birth you want without having to fight, beg, or compromise. And yes, I am actually going to read you the entire Your Empowered Birth book. This is something you can get off of Amazon if you really want to support me. If you're loving this, if you're like, you know what, I just want to give just a little bit back to the Empowered Birth movement, then I am encouraging you to do that. You can go get the book off of Amazon. You can also learn more at empoweringmomsbirth.com/book. I'm also going to let you know that with this book comes additional bonuses that you can get through your email. So all you have to do is go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/extras, and that will get you the bonuses that come with your empowered birth. It's the stuff that I couldn't fit in. Back when I wrote Your Empowered Birth the first time, the first iteration of it, I shared about in the introduction about how I basically had written this book first to try to help myself get a little bit of income. I was in a toxic and abusive relationship. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to write this book. I wrote a 90,000 word behemoth over the summer in that time, way back in 2020 when the world had shut down. And then Your Empowered Birth is basically like the overall structure and the 5 pillars of empowered birth and how to get the birth you want. But all of the other details, like how to ask questions to figure out if your care provider is right for you, the questions on induction, persuading, the natural birth traps, and choosing your birth location, getting your partner on board with your birth plan, all of those little guides actually came from the 90,000 word behemoth of a book with the rough draft that I had written out. So I do encourage you to go and get that, because then that's the entire thing. That's everything that I wrote with Your Empowered Birth. And all you have to do is go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/extras. Now you're probably wondering why I'm reading my entire book out for free if I also have it on Amazon. And that is simple. If you truly want to get this book, I want you to know what's in it. I want you to know the value that you're holding in your hands. I don't want this to be another book that you buy and leave on your shelf and you don't do anything with it. So if you happen to be someone who is an auditory learner, having a book in your possession is helpful. However, you might also benefit from having it as audio. And if you are a visual learner, then having the audio in itself, maybe it goes in one ear and out the other, but you also really appreciate having a tangible copy of something in your hands to read. I myself am a visual learner. So I have friends and mentors who have audio programs or video programs, but they don't have a book and they don't have PDF guides that I can read. And that means that a lot of stuff gets lost in translation. I am committed to transforming maternity care to become more mother-centered. I believe in empowered birth. I know what it does, and I hate birth trauma. The fact that a lot of women are getting pushed into births that they didn't actually want and could have avoided in the first place, it could have avoided that trauma, is why my YouTube channel exists. It's why I put out a lot on social media. It's why I have a lot of free content, because what I really charge for when I'm working with a client is not information that's out there. It's to be able to do that magical process of looking at what they've already created for themselves in their birth plan, or what they're doing with their partner dynamic and what they're doing with their care provider, to really see those little tiny tweaks that I need to help them with, or help them release their fear, use the tools that they need to advocate for themselves. So that's what I really charge for, even in my deeper dive programs. My Empowered Birth Workshop is a little bit of information, but it also gives you an overview of the Empowered Birth system. So you can go and check that out as well. I'll talk more about that later. I also mention it inside Your Empowered Birth because this is how it all got started, is that Jenny, my best friend and business partner, co-founder of the Empowered Birth Workshop, she helped me to see the value that I really had in my teaching, because I used to just share information. And she said, Carly, how do I take your classes? And I'm like, I don't have any. So we ended up creating that. And then based on the classes that we did together and the workshops that were helping these moms have these amazing empowered births, and Jenny herself going from saying, I'm never having another baby again. I've been so traumatized by this experience and I'm high risk, to planning another baby by the time her daughter had turned 1 year old, to getting pregnant after the third empowered birth workshop, to having her baby in 2022 at the same time that the manuscript of Your Empowered Birth had finally been written. So in 2022, I wrote out the manuscript, I had it, and then I went out and I had to tweak it a bit because Jenny went and had her baby. So there was another empowered birth story, a powerful empowered birth story that I am going to share with you as I read Your Empowered Birth. If you just found this video, you're like, wait a minute, I didn't see the introduction. I'm just going to let you know that there is a playlist inside my YouTube channel that tells you this is the Your Empowered Birth playlist, and you can watch those in succession so you can read the book from cover to cover, because this is the kind of book you want to read cover to cover. It builds on each step. So each chapter builds on itself. So you're going to want to go through and read the whole book. And again, if you're like, you know what, I don't want to wait, I want to get this now, I don't want to wait for a next video to come out, but I want this book, you can go to Amazon and you can go and get it. Your Empowered Birth is available. And the reason I put it out there again is because it's expensive to work with me. I don't work with everyone. I don't take everyone on as a client. I have my Empowered Birth Academy. I have the Empowered Birth Workshop. And ultimately, what I want is I just want this out there. I just want this out there for anybody. If you had also seen my introduction, you know I had a house fire. So I have been in a place where I could not afford anything. And even buying a book at that point, I couldn't do that. So this is why this is out there, so you can get that education, because I'm all about the right education. And I truly believe that knowledge on its own is not enough. You also have to get past your fears, and you need to get out of the murky waters that you've basically been swimming in that has it so you can't see what's really going on. Your Empowered Birth is going to show you this. In fact, I'm going to teach to you today. I'm going to read chapter 1 of this book, The Natural Birth Traps, and that's going to help you understand what's really going on. If you want to know more about the natural birth traps, there is a list of 20 of them inside of the extras. You just go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/extras. I also have additional traps and things that I've put out, lists, mistakes that are being made. They are on my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/freebies. And I put all this on my social media as well. So now we're going to dive in to chapter 1. Chapter 1, The Natural Birth Traps. Have you ever wondered why most natural birth plans tend to fail? Why do so many women start off planning to avoid inductions, C-sections, the epidural, and swear up and down that they won't be cut or medicated during their births, and then 9 months later, that's exactly what happens? Why is it that so many people tell you not to get your hopes up and not bother with a birth plan? There are so many courses and books out there that tell you that if you just avoid this one thing, or do what your doctor tells you, or you hire a doula or a midwife, that you'll somehow magically get what you want in your birth. I wish that was the case, but the truth is that unless you know what's going on behind the curtain in the birth world, and unless you figured out the loopholes, you could end up like my friend Kate. She was a first-time mom who had done all the things that first-time moms planning natural births are told to do. And she wound up having a C-section and asking herself how the hell it happened. You're going to hear Kate's story in a moment, but first, I'm going to ask you something. Have you done everything you need to do to ensure you will get the birth you want? How much have you prepared and thought about this birth? What have you already considered? How much are you willing to invest your time and money into making sure it happens. Since you picked up this book, I'm going to guess that you are invested enough that you would pay money for some things that would ensure birth go your way. You might choose to have an out of hospital birth and be willing to pay out of pocket for a midwife. You might have hired a doula. You might be enrolling in childbirth classes. I have some uncomfortable news for you. Kate did those things too. She still wound up with a traumatic birth. This isn't because of any failing in her body, though. If Kate had known the secrets I'm going to teach you in this book, she might have had a different outcome. Unfortunately, no one told her those secrets until after it was already too late. Many women who have learned what I'm going to tell you have been outraged. They've cried out, "Why did no one tell me this when I needed to hear it most?" Some women have gone their entire adult lives not knowing that the trauma they had in their births didn't have to happen. I've spoken at an event where a woman in her 60s told me that in hearing these secrets, it had triggered her own past birth traumas, and she was finally able to find some healing by learning from me. Women in their 80s have thanked me for finally giving them a voice for what they had felt when they had been frightened new mothers. Birth trauma has been going on for a long time, and sadly, no one will warn you about it. This is because often they don't understand what happened themselves, and they have no frame of reference to help you avoid the same fate. The cycle continues generation after generation, and until someone shares their story, you won't know how to break this cycle. This is why I wanted to include Kate's story for you, because not only is this story powerful, but it holds the key to avoiding the common traps most moms planning a natural birth fall into. Kate's story. Kate was excited. After months of trying to get pregnant, it had finally happened. She had dreamed of this moment for so long, and she had envied the beautiful women in the black and white Instagram photos with their babies born lovingly and peacefully at home or at a birth center. She knew that she wanted a completely natural birth, and so she did what all newly pregnant mothers would do. She bought books, courses, and attended all the classes. She asked around about midwives, and someone pointed her in the direction of a good practice that they had gone to for their own pregnancies. Kate got a list of questions to ask her midwife off the internet and asked about home birth. The midwife told her that as long as Kate stayed low risk, then home birth was an option. Kate was satisfied and hired her midwife on the spot. As Kate got further in her pregnancy, she attended the childbirth classes and practiced the coping techniques for pain management. She and her partner practiced the different positions. She wrote out her birth plan in her final months. As Kate's pregnancy neared the final few weeks, her family and friends grew concerned. They had learned of Kate's plans to have a home birth. "It's your first baby," they reasoned. "You should be in the hospital in case something goes wrong." Kate attended her appointments in her final months, and her midwife assessed her progress, checking her cervix, which was still not showing any signs that labor would start soon. Kate started to feel anxious. She really didn't want to induce her labor. Her midwife assured her that they wouldn't have to induce unless Kate went past 41 weeks, and then if she didn't go into labor by that point, they would have to do something. Kate was informed that the policy and regulations of the practice were that all clients needed to birth their babies by 42 weeks or they would risk out of midwife care. Kate panicked. She didn't want to switch care to an obstetrician. She didn't want to have to abandon her home birth plans. She didn't want to be induced or even set foot in the hospital. Desperate for a way to get labor going, Kate asked every online pregnancy group for help. She tried exercise, sex, dates, spicy food, walking, acupuncture, acupressure, evening primrose oil, red raspberry leaf tea, and she even considered castor oil and midwives' brew. When she was still pregnant at 41 weeks, her midwife suggested a membrane sweep. Kate agreed. That night, she had a lot of cramping. Her mucus plug had come loose, and she wondered if labor was starting. She called her midwife and was informed that her contractions were still too far apart and to call back when they were closer together, lasted longer than a minute, and were more intense. Kate had a restless night, but by morning the contractions had stopped. She was told it was false labor. You had a membrane sweep yesterday, her midwife reminded her. Sometimes that triggers labor-like contractions. We can try again in a few days. Kate agreed. She was desperate to get into labor before she would risk out of midwife care. The second sweep didn't work either. Kate endured another restless night, and by morning she was exhausted and running out of time. Some people just don't go into labor on their own, her mother told her. I went overdue with you too. Induction really isn't that bad. You'll be fine. Kate agreed to an induction at 41 weeks and 5 days. Her midwife assured her that she would be there for the birth and they could still make the hospital a home-like experience for her. Because Kate's cervix still hadn't started to dilate on its own, the first step was to ripen it with prostaglandins. Contractions began and Kate was already feeling a lot of discomfort. She didn't like being in the bed, but now that she was being induced, she was informed that continuous monitoring was necessary to ensure the induction wasn't too stressful on the baby. After a few hours, she couldn't take it anymore. The midwife said that Kate had only dilated 1 centimeter and they needed her to be at 4 centimeters before they could start the next step of the induction process. Kate agreed to have an epidural so that she could have some relief. She slept a few hours, and when she woke up, she was informed that things still had not progressed and that the next step would be to break her waters and give her something to get things going. She was told that it was oxytocin and that it would help her have her baby sooner. Kate didn't want to agree, but she also knew that her body wasn't doing what it was supposed to do and that she had run out of options. Homebirth was out of the question now, and the induction process had already started. The nurse administered the oxytocin through the IV, and Kate was thankful that the epidural could be topped up because those contractions lasted for much longer than a minute and were one on top of the other. A few hours later, the doctor came into the room. There's still no sign of progress, he said. Your baby is in distress. We have to perform a C-section. Kate was devastated. Her entire plan for a natural birth had fallen apart, and she didn't know how or why this was happening. She'd done everything right. She'd hired a midwife and taken all the birth classes. She'd taken care of herself, eaten well, and exercised. It didn't make any sense at all. She cried silently as she lay on the operating table. She hadn't wanted any of this. She simply wanted to birth her baby at home, in the waters, surrounded by people who loved and supported her. After the birth, Kate felt like her body had betrayed her. She wondered if she would ever get to have that beautiful birth at home, now that she'd had a cesarean. Okay, so what happened? You probably have a lot of questions right now. What happened that led to her getting the exact kind of birth that she had been trying to avoid? Why did her body fail to go into labor, even though she was doing everything she was supposed to do? Was what her mother said to her actually the truth? Did she just not have the ability to go into labor on her own? More importantly, if Kate does try for another baby, will the same thing happen to her again? Before I answer those questions, I need to come clean. Kate isn't real. She's just a combination of the stories and experiences of women I have spoken to and supported for the last 10 years. In some ways, Kate's story is my story. In other ways, Kate's story is the story of my friends and clients who were talked into an induction and those who found themselves recovering from an unwanted cesarean, episiotomy, or assisted vaginal delivery with forceps or vacuum extraction. It's the story of every single woman who started off planning their dream birth only to wind up in a nightmare. Kate's story is so powerful because it's familiar. It's something you will find in every single mom group. If your goal is a natural birth, then I need to warn you of something you might not be aware. Kate's story could very easily become yours. I know you don't want to hear this. After all, women have been giving birth naturally since the dawn of time. Surely your body works as it's supposed to. You may have already hired a midwife and a doula. You might have started your search for natural birth classes, the Bradley method, hypnobirthing. You're convinced that this is enough. I'm sorry to break this to you, but it's not. In fact, if you rely on only those things and you don't start focusing on the real issues in our maternity care system, you're going to find yourself in a similar situation to Kate's. Maybe it won't go as far as a C-section. Maybe you'll just wind up narrowly avoiding it like I did. Maybe your induction will work well enough that you have a vaginal birth, but the pain is something that you'll never be able to forget. Maybe you'll avoid the induction, but not the vaginal exams in the hospital. Maybe you'll get talked out of your home birth. Whatever happens, the fact remains that in every single one of these possible scenarios, and there are so many more, there's one common thread. At some point, you will lose your power and wonder afterwards what the hell happened and why you made that choice that led to the regrets or even trauma in your birth. Why did you agree to that induction? Why didn't you just stay home a little longer? Why did you let them tell you that you weren't allowed? First, I want you to take a deep breath and hear these words. It is not your fault. Any decision that you have made up until this point has been based off of what you have been previously taught. The books and classes did not fully prepare you. You might have been taught how labor works, but you weren't warned that the very system you are birthing in and the very culture you were immersed in since birth has trained you to give your power away. If you remain unaware of these influences, you will agree to that induction out of fear. You will do it because you will believe that there are no other options. You will do it because you will be told that it's risky not to induce labor past a certain point in your pregnancy. You will do it because that's just what everybody does and it's policy. You will go to the hospital to birth your baby because that's what's expected. You will think you are not allowed because you've grown up hearing that you must always listen to the experts and ignore your own feelings and intuition. You've been taught to mistrust your own body and ignore your instincts, telling you that something isn't right. You've been taught that you don't know as much as other people. And so you will continue to ask the wrong questions, get the wrong answers, and then feel more afraid and confused than when you originally asked those questions. I can tell you from experience that wanting a natural birth and actually getting one are two entirely different things. You can want it and think that you will get it by default of being healthy and educated, but the reality is that every step of the way, you're going to run into hidden traps. You're stepping into them already by thinking that this book will teach you how to cope with natural birth so you can better be prepared for it. So I'm going to level with you here. This book is different from anything you've ever heard about natural birth. In fact, this book isn't going to tell you how to cope at all. Instead, I'm going to show you that you already have everything you need to birth your baby naturally. You're right about one thing. Birth is as old as humanity itself. That means that simply by being human, you can birth. Your body will grow your baby and birth your baby, all without you doing a single thing to make it happen. This isn't to say that certain things won't help it along and make it easier, but even without those things, you will birth. Your body knows how. It is your mindset and the culture that you live in that is the real obstacle to you actually getting a natural birth. Fortunately, you were smart enough to get this book. If you keep reading, then I promise by the end of it, you'll be in a better position to have a natural birth than most women who are also seeking out how to do it. This is a secret I stumbled upon by accident. It's something I wasn't even looking for when I found it. And that secret is what I'm going to share with you. I'm going to tell you exactly what traps you need to avoid when planning your natural birth. I'm going to warn you against every trick that our protagonist Kate fell into when she was planning that beautiful home birth that never came to pass. I'm going to show you exactly what you can do to avoid that fate. In fact, by the end of this book, you are going to feel so confident going into your birth that no one will be able to talk you into anything that you don't want. You won't crumble under the pressure. You won't give in. You won't give up. You won't let anyone tell you that you're not allowed. You won't listen to anyone who tells you that you can't do it. This book is a culmination of everything I have learned in the past 10 years as a mother, a birth advocate, a childbirth educator, a doula, and a coach. I have filled it with case stories, both from my own life and the lives of the women I have helped, in the hopes that it will inspire you as you create your birth plan and go through your pregnancy. I'm going to share with you some proven strategies, journal exercises, and key questions you can ask in order to stand your ground and actually get the birth you want to have. And I'll show you what you can do when you recognize a need to deviate from your plan in the event of a true health complication or issue that develops. If you take the time to do the exercises and treat this book as if it were a course or a coaching program worth thousands of dollars, then I promise you will get far more out of it than if you simply read it. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is that when I chose to rise up from the ashes and start my own business, I didn't do it alone. I used the same system that I had developed for birth, and part of it led me to seeking out people who could support me properly in my journey and who had the information I needed. Of course, information and support are not enough. You could read this entire book and not do a single thing with it and wind up having a traumatic birth. The reason I was able to build my business so fast and leave my ex isn't actually that remarkable. In fact, it's stupidly simple. I just took what I was learning and applied it right away. I didn't hesitate. I didn't mess around. I knew what I wanted. I was determined to get it no matter what. And when my coaches and mentors told me to try something, I did it. If it didn't work, I tweaked it until it did work. Then I looked for ways to make it even better. Implementation is the real power of this book. You need to practice these skills if you are to remain in your power during the most pivotal moment of your birth journey. Essentially, what I aim to do here is give you the exact strategies that I use with my coaching clients and the exact strategies I learned from some of my coaches. You might be wondering what a coach does. A coach is someone who believes in their client and helps them through transitions in their lives and helps them transform into a higher version of themselves. This is what I've always done for the women I've helped. I don't tell them what to do. I let them see their own power, reflect it back to them, and then they can proudly declare that they birthed their babies themselves. The moment I heard the term coach to describe what I do for women in my community, I knew it fit perfectly. Pregnancy and birth are the ultimate transitions and life transformations. You are going to learn more about yourself and your body than you ever thought possible. After the birth, you will never be the same. This can be a good thing if you go into it with all your power in your own hands. If this is your first pregnancy, then you will never have to know what it's like to have your power stripped from you, and you will come to motherhood with so much confidence in yourself and your abilities to care for your child that no one will be able to undermine you. You'll start to take on life in a new way, create things that will light you up, and have a completely unique and amazing journey. On the other hand, birth trauma can change you too. It can take away your confidence in yourself and leave you broken, shattered, gutted, and wondering how the hell it all happened. It can leave you doubting your abilities as a mother. It can affect the bond with your child and with your partner. There is no limit to how far birth trauma can reach in all areas of your life. So you have a choice. You can claim your power and decide now that you are the only one who can birth this baby, and you are therefore the only one who gets to decide, or you can let someone else decide for you what you are allowed to do. If you choose the first one, you might find that things could change in your birth and decisions might have to be made, but you'll still come out the other side with an empowered birth because every decision was yours. But if you give that power away, you will come out the other side feeling like something was missing. You'll feel how Kate felt, wondering what the hell happened and blaming yourself for how your birth turned out. So it's time to take your power back. In the next chapter, I'll show you why natural birth often fails and what you need to do to play the game differently so that you win. And P.S., I've also included some special bonuses for you to avoid the natural birth traps. So you're going to get them at empoweringmomsbirth.com/extras. And in the next chapter, I'm going to tell you why birth actually doesn't work. And you're going to understand what went wrong and why Kate actually got into those traps in the first place. And if you're familiar with my natural birth traps, then you probably already spotted a few of them. But you're going to understand the basic psychology of it, because it's not enough to just have the list of traps. You need to know why. If you don't know why and you don't know the actual psychology of it, you can still fall into it. So this is the thing, is you've been taught what to think, not how to think. And you're going to get out of that by following what's in your empowered birth. If you want a copy, all you have to do is go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/book to learn more, or go check it out on Amazon and go get it there. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.